A person is located 225 meters and 35 degrees north of west from her initial position. She walked from her initial position to her final position in two stages. In the first stage of her walk, she walked 150 meters at 20 degrees south of east. How far and in what direction did she walk in her second walk? Alright, so how are we able to work out this question? So the first thing is we need to make an interpretation of the data that we've been given. So since we can hear of north, west, south, east, obviously there should be a compass here, so we're going to put down a compass. Go the west, the east, the north, and the south. So a person is located, the final position in other words where the person is located is 225 meters and 35 degrees north of west. If we are talking of north of west, that should be in this quadrant. Now look at this, north of west. So the second position to be mentioned, that is where we're coming from. So we're coming from the west towards the north, 35 degrees. All right, the magnitude is 225. And then in our first walk, so this is the final position or the resultant. Now in our first walk, we've been told she walked 150 meters at 200 south of east. So south of east, that should be in this quadrant. Now because east is the second of east, that's the second one to be mentioned. We're coming from the east direction like that. Okay, so the position, the magnitude is 150. This is the first movement. So what we are going to do is we're going to break this into components. What we want to find is a second movement before she reached this final position. So I'm going to put the walk here. I'll put the x component and also the y component. So we have got the first walk, and the first walk is the one that has been mentioned here. Well, the angle I then put, this is at 20 degrees. So to find the x component, we'll say the magnitude, which is 150, cos the angle. Now take the angle from the positive x-axis in the anti-clockwise direction. So what angle will be that? If this is 20, we know that a complete revolution is supposed to be 360. So that will be 360 minus 20, which is the 340 degrees. Alright, and this is going to give us approximately 140.95. And then this side, it will be 150 sin 340. And this will give us approximately negative 51.3. Now in our second walk, that's what we want to find. We don't know the x component, we also don't know the y component. But the resultant or the final position we've been told is 225. That's the magnitude. Now cos the x component, you take this angle from the positive x-axis. So if we've been given this as 35, what will be this angle? So it is just 180 minus 35, and that is going to give us 145. Okay, so if we say 225 cos 145, that should give us negative 184.309. Then this side it will be 225 sine 145, and that will give us approximately 124.05. Okay, now for us to be able to work out this question, what are we going to do? Actually, this is 129.05, not 124. Okay, so for us to be able to find the value of x and y, we know that if we get the first position and the second position, we add them, they should give us a final position. So we're going to get the x components, we add them, the y components, we add them. So we're going to say x component for the first position is 140.95. If we add to x, we should be able to get negative 184.309. And then the y components, if we add negative 51.3 and y, we should be able to get 129.05. So if I take this value the other side, it will be negative 184.309 minus 140.95. So that will give us the x component, and therefore X component is going to give us negative 324.309. If we take this value the other side, it's going to become positive, and so it will be 129.05 plus 51.3, and that will give us about 180.35. All right, we found the X component and the Y component. Now we can find the magnitude and also determine the direction. All right, so the magnitude here for the second position is going to be the square root of the X component, which is what? Negative 324.09. This should be in brackets. We get to square that, plus the Y component, which is 180 plus 35, also get to square that, and that is going to give us approximately 371.08 meters. We also need to find the direction given by theta. Theta is given by tan inverse of Y component. Now the Y component is 180.35 over the X component, which is negative 324.309, and this will give us approximately negative 29.08. Now if we just look at these two values, the X component and the Y component, the X component is negative, meaning that is going to be this side, while the Y component is positive. Okay, so the vector is going to be here, meaning that this angle that we have found, the angle is always related to the x-axis, so this is going to be the angle that we have found. Now I want to give the angle starting from the positive x here. So what are we going to do? All we do is to this angle that we have found, we add 180. Now this sign is just there to tell us the direction. So if we want, we can just say 180 minus this angle. Minus what angle? 29.08. Don't put the negative. The negative is already just telling us the direction. So that is going to give us about 150.9 degrees. If we want, we can just give this same one. We're going to say the direction is 29.08 degrees. This is what? This is north of west. Okay, remember I've mentioned west second because that is where the angle is coming from, going towards the north. So that is how we're able to work out this question.